1. This story is what happens when you have idiots, aka entitled people, dissect dead frogs, worms, owl pellets, and possibly shark. I was away during the shark dissecting day for church-related reasons. This is during my high school years. If anything sounds off, it's due to what I can recall. In some parts, maybe left out from the actual incident. We were told about a week in advance about having to dissect worms and learned about their anatomy before the day arrived. Yes, we also did a review the day before and were told not to just poke around with the sharp scalping knife. Then came the day of dissecting, and Anna, my partner and good friend, has a fear of blood. So we made an agreement that if I get the worm this time, next time she'll have to get the frog. But I'll handle most of the cutting while she gives me the instructions on where to cut so she doesn't pass out from the sight of blood, like a good friend would do. So I used the tongs and brought over the worm and sat down at our table, where Anna was sitting with our medical cutting utensils and our instruction paper. I'll admit we didn't know which side was the head or the bottom and just eventually started cutting. While I did this, we could hear Harley, Quinn, Dumbass, and Dummy goofing around on the other side of the classroom. Harley said,
Ew, it stinks.
Followed by Quinn saying,
Yeah, I didn't think worms could smell this bad.
Dumbass was waving their worm around saying, Oh look, a dead worm, ah! And it must have slipped out of the tongue, go flying, and must have landed on Harley, because she started screaming and acting like she was on fire, to which Mr. Ray told them sternly to stop goofing around and start dissecting their worm. They eventually did and shut up for a bit. Then we heard a sweetly,
Mr. Ray, can you come and help us with cutting?
Mr. Ray sighs and goes over to see whatever they need help with, because he's a teacher, and admittedly Harley just started asking if he can help them cut through the skin, because she and Quinn were having difficulty with making a small cut through the skin. By this time I had finished pinning the skin, and Anna was going to move closer to start identifying the organs. Anna realized that there weren't blood and just chemicals, so she wasn't too scared. We could see out of the corner of our eyes Harley and Quinn acting like they didn't have the strength to slice through the skin of the worm. As anyone who has dissected a worm knows, it's not too hard to get through, but we just ignored them and focused on pointing out the organs before calling Mr. Ray over to quiz us before we can finish. Then Dumbass sneaks by and yelled loudly to startle us. We jumped, and he laughed, saying loudly, You're so jumpy. Be careful not to cut yourself. He had overheard me telling Anna that I had a fear of sharp things, especially knives, but I luckily wasn't holding anything sharp, and was using a pointer to point out which organ. Mr. Ray must have gotten annoyed of helping cut the worm for Harley and told them, If I do most of the cutting, then it's going to be docked from your grade. Before walking away and started quizzing our other classmates, who were waiting patiently to be finished. Then, when it was over, Harley interrupted Mr. Ray by calling him over to help them again. He walked halfway to them and just said, You haven't done anything since I walked away. Get going or you're both staying after class until you finish. Before coming back to me and Anna's table. We got a few organs wrong, but still got the other organs just fine and finished. We just walked back to our desk after carefully getting rid of the worm, and I just started reading my book while Anna did her homework. When we hear, they just squirted in my mouth. Dumbass and Dummy also poked at one organ that was also sprayed too. They jumped back so hard they nearly fell out of their chairs. 2. Hey guys, so yesterday at work I had an encounter with a Karen. 2. I had made a post a little over a year ago about a guy who wouldn't accept free food and demanded money instead. I have since left that job, and I am now a delivery guy for a pizza franchise. The pay is significantly more than my barista job. When I changed jobs, I assumed that it would be smooth sailing from there. For a short period of time it was. Friendly work environment, super chill boss, and to top it all off, the customers were absolutely pleasant. But with all jobs, you're bound to run into a Karen or two. My time came yesterday, when a Karen came into our store. So, one of my co-workers, Steve, and I were chilling out in the front of the store. Now, where I work, the amount of business we get fluctuates, so while we'll be extremely busy one day, we'll be super slow the next. On this particular day, it was slow, other than a singular delivery order and a couple of carry-out orders. So our boss comes into the store and, after seeing how slow it was, tells us to feel free to make food for ourselves. Steve and I are stoked, since neither of us had eaten at all that day. Steve makes himself a medium pizza with cheese, and I make my own pizza, a medium with pepperoni and bacon. We both put our pizzas in the oven and wait. About 3 minutes after the pizzas go in, the front door of the store dings, signaling that a customer has entered. So right from the moment she walked in, I could tell that this wasn't gonna be a pleasant encounter. She sauntered into the store with the classic Karen hairstyle, a look on her face that said, "I'm better than you, and I know it," and who I assume was her teenage son in tow. So I look over at Steve, then back at her. Before I could greet her, she says, "I'm picking up an order for Karen. Make it snappy, I don't have all day." So I go over to the heat rack and find her order. That's when I saw on the receipt that the order hadn't been paid for yet. So I put the 2 pizzas that she ordered on the counter and told her the price. With a huff, she paid. And I thought that was the end of it, but no. When it comes to Karens, when you think it's over and done, they will constantly find a way to continue. So the lady asked for an extra ranch dipping cup. Now, one of the rules we have about the dipping cups is that we're not allowed to give extra dipping cups to the customers for free. The only time the dipping cups are free is if they actually came with the order, which in this particular case they didn't. So I grab the ranch cup, put it on the counter, and tell her the price, which was literally a measly 69 cents. She looks at me and says, "Are you kidding me? You can't just give me the cup for free? You have plenty already." To which I responded, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but no, I can't." Now, one thing I've learned from all the other Karen-related stories that I've heard is that Karens absolutely hate being told no, for any reason. So, when I tell her that I can't give her the cup for free, she started yelling and swearing, saying things like, "Are you going to charge me to go to the bathroom too? Or maybe you're going to make me pay for extra napkins too?" At this point, Steve and I are getting pretty annoyed, and that's when my boss, who I found out later on was actually the MCO of the company, comes in and asks what's going on. As we're explaining what's happening, the Karen suddenly goes completely off topic, talking about how our customer service was terrible. She then mentions that she actually owns her own pizza restaurant where, allegedly, they make over 500 pizzas a day. I'm not sure if she was being truthful or just blowing smoke, but my boss looks over at her and, without skipping a beat, says, "Well, if you own your own restaurant, what the heck are you doing here? Throwing a hissy fit over a 69 cup of ranch." The store got so quiet that you could practically hear a feather fall. I look over at the Karen's son, who is trying his absolute hardest not to laugh. Steve and I were containing our own laughter as well. So then Karen hurls more insults before grabbing her pizzas and leaving the store with her son. Steve and I share a laugh before going back to enjoy our pizzas. Later on that day, the store gets a call. It's the Karen's son, apologizing for how his mother behaved earlier that day. He explained that she's constantly doing that wherever they go. She loves causing drama and starting trouble for people. I tell him no worries, and that I knew what her gameplay was the second she walked in. We chatted for a bit before saying goodbye and ending the call. So a bit of a happy ending to what was honestly a very amusing and slightly annoying encounter with a Karen. 3. From the end of graduating high school to a few years after graduating college, about 5 years during and after community college, with a 1 or 2 year break for university, I worked as a porter for one of those interstate travel plazas you see where truckers and travelers stop to get gas and eat. My main job there mainly consisted of cleaning and sanitation, the usual stuff like cleaning the bathrooms, mopping up spills, taking out the trash, and answering customer questions if asked. Often, one of the most common questions was, "Where is the bathroom?" A standard question if ever there was one. But the people surprised me in a few cases, with one guy asking how to get out of the bathroom at one point. I can recall the same guy even asked me where the door was to get out of the building when he was standing in front of it. There I go again, rambling on like usual. But this was just a preface to some of the strangeness I've seen at that place. Now, from the strange to the entitled, I have 4 short stories of entitled customers I encountered while on the job. 1. Stop the water, I refuse to pay for it. I forget what year it was, but I do know it was shortly before COVID. I was minding my own business, just sweeping out the lobby, when along comes this man over to me and asks if I knew there was a sink running non-stop in the men's bathroom. I knew what he was talking about immediately, as since the building was renovated cheaply, some of the fixtures and such had a tendency to fail. For example, the AC unit caught fire twice. Anyway, the sink had been running non-stop for weeks. The second one to do so, actually, but this man wanted me to turn off the water. I told him I didn't have the ability to. He then wanted me to get a manager, so I did. As I was walking off, the man said to me that he was a taxpayer, and that he didn't want to waste his money paying for a water bill in a town he didn't live in. I knew that he was just looking for an excuse to complain, as the plaza paid for its own water and taxes had nothing to do with it. I got the manager and went on my way. Not sure what happened after that, as I had outside trash to attend to, but it was weird. I'm not sure if this first story goes here, but the following 3 certainly do. 2. My pizza slice is cold! So, the Travel Plaza used to have a pizza parlor that was shut down due to lack of staffing. It lay empty during COVID and opened up again afterward. Wanting to move up, I volunteered to work in it with the promise of becoming a supervisor if I proved myself. Though about 4 days later, the manager hired someone who worked at a pizza shop before as a supervisor. For a while it was just me, the supervisor, her boyfriend, and an older man. We made the pizzas from scratch. Admittedly, we struggled to roll out the frozen dough sometimes. After making the pizzas, we would put them out on display and warm them up for customers. Now, to heat up a slice would take about 5 to 9 minutes. And this one woman comes up and asks for a slice of cheese and a slice of pepperoni. I put both in the oven for the same amount of time, and put them on a plate when they're ready. About 1 minute later, the woman returns and says that her slice of cheese is stone cold. I'm thinking to myself, how? I just gave it to you. I handed her 2 warm slices that were warming next to each other for the same amount of time. How could one be hot and the other be cold? Not wanting to argue or get fired, I simply heated the slice up for her again. In my mind, I was tempted to reply to her with an insult like, if you want to warm up your slice, then hold it in front of your mouth while you talk. I'm sure that hot air you exhale is higher in temperature than my oven. Again, this was in my head, as I'm too polite to say something like that to a person's face. 3. You can't check my money. No one counterfeits 5s and 10s. Now, this one I feel was set up by some greater power. I'm serving another customer about a month or 2 after the cold slice story. She says that she wants to pay with cash and a card. At the time, I was still slightly unsure of how to use some of the register's functions, as it was an outdated system with too many buttons and options for foods we didn't carry. It was so outdated that you needed a manager to come and swipe a card so you could void an item they changed their mind about. Me being me, didn't know how to do hybrid payments, as they are a bit rare. I thought you could only do cash or card and asked the woman politely which she would like to do. With a huff, she said she would go back to her car and get cash. Just as I was wondering why she didn't just pay with the card if she didn't have enough cash, one of the managers on duty came by and told me to be careful as someone tried to pass a counterfeit $50 bill at one of the other 2 counters. Taking that to my mental vault, I was going to keep an eye out. The woman then came back with a 5 and a 10, so having just been informed of the warning, I put the 10 up to the light and checked for the telltale watermark. The moment I put it up to the light, the woman starts to raise her voice at me, asking why I had the nerve to check her money. I tried to explain my reasoning, but she didn't follow the logic, and just said, "Nobody counterfeits 5s and 10s. By that point, I was overwhelmed as she was demanding to see the manager. Thankfully, either one of my coworkers must have heard the commotion and brought the manager over. He told me to go in the back. I was worried I was in trouble, as that was the first time I encountered an aggressive customer. Thankfully, my manager reassured me that it wasn't my fault after the woman left. Looking back, I can kinda see where she's coming from. But think about it, larger bills aren't the only thing counterfeiters print. People are more likely to pass smaller bills than large ones, as things like 5, 10s, and 20s are rarely checked. Who's to say whether or not such a thing could happen? Health Freezer's note, having worked in retail for almost 15 years, I can assure you, as larger bills get more scrutiny, people are more likely to try and counterfeit smaller bills. I think I took one once, I'm gonna say, but I did get very, very good at spotting them. Some of them were good, but some of them were just insultingly bad. On with the story. 4. I don't care if the line is long. You gave us an incomplete order and we want our money back. So, about maybe 6 or 7 months after the pizza place reopened, the big bosses of the plaza decided that we weren't making enough dough. I know it was a cheap pun. Complaint forms are available in the comments below. That, coupled with the lack of proper training and the fact that the managers were too focused on the coffee shop and the fast food counter, ensured that the place would be emptied out again. Everyone was transferred over to the fast food counter, and I was assigned to the prep line, where I placed the orders into bags. Though this was after COVID and the restrictions were lifted and everyone seemed to pile in, I remember it was early September on a weekday, where we had a sudden rush of families with kids coming through, and I wondered why the children weren't in school. Those I was making the orders that came one after another, one group called me to the side and told me that I made their order wrong and that I was missing a sandwich. Looking at the order, I saw that they were short a sandwich and offered to get it once it was ready. But I had other orders to fill. Though they wouldn't wait, as they claimed to be in a hurry and either got their sandwich or they wanted a refund. I tried to get the cook to make a new burger, but they were too busy to hear me. Eventually, the group demanded the manager and insisted they get a refund. They didn't care that the line was long, they wanted one of the registers to stop handling customers and to get their money back. So that's what happened. The rest of the day was a blur, and I was placed to work at the grill and fryer after that. Now, I found a new job about a month or so later, as I recall, not the best with dates, as I was getting tired of getting the runaround from the plaza's ever-rotating roster of managers and moving up the ladder. Last time I visited the place, the coffee shop closed down, and the pizza place was replaced with a donut shop and a smoothie and ice cream shop. I like where I work now, as everyone there is friendly and the customers are more sensible, save for the one who stole some cigarettes but was stupid enough to be wearing work clothes and driving his work truck. But that's a story for another time. Trust me, this stuff was tame compared to what I went through during my high school job. In parting word, a customer is always right, but this is split in one of two categories. They are right in their actions and words, or right out of their minds. 4. This happened in 2000. For context, I lived and worked in central New Jersey, about an hour's drive from Philly. It's an area where there is mostly Giants fans, with a significant smattering of Eagles fans as well. I wasn't a fan of either team. One of the women I worked with was one of these devoted Eagles fans. The team was doing quite well that year. This woman would start talking about the team even though nobody would ask her about it. It got to the point that she was getting to be obnoxious about it. One Monday morning, another Eagles win. She taped a sheet of paper by her cubicle saying, "Eagles won last night and is closing in on first place." Okay, that's fine. But then she gets to be more snotty about her team. Next Monday, the Eagles won again. Gets to first place in their division. She posted a sign by her cubicle, "Eagles won and is now in first place." Right, like nobody watches football here and no one knows. Some of the other folks were starting to get annoyed with her at this point. I was mostly hearing people whispering about it. Next week, another Eagles win, another sign, "Eagles win and stay in first." So now some of the other girls are telling her she's being childish about this, to which she responds, "Yeah, and you Giants fans are just salty." One of the girls told me she better watch the comebacks to her when her team loses. So I hatched a plan, but it can only happen if the Eagles lost. The next Sunday, they did. What's more, they dropped from first, with the Giants claiming the top spot. So I got to the office really early. I took her old sign down, downloaded an Eagles logo, did a sign with the same fonts she used, which I taped to her cubicle. I anticipated she'd be in late for being upset about the loss. By the time she got there, most of the folks who have been annoyed with her saw the sign and were laughing about it. All were waiting for her to come and see the sign. Then we heard her coming in, like literally you can hear her walking, as she has a way of making weird noises when she walks. Aside from her walking, I could tell everyone else was waiting to hear her reaction. Then she sees my sign. Eagles lost and drops from first place. She was livid, demanding to know who did it. Her boss came out of her office and told her to get in there. The superfan was shouting, with her boss telling her to stop it. She said she'd go to HR. But her boss told her, "And do what? You were the one who started posting your signs. You think you weren't pissing people off? Grow up." After a few minutes, she stomped back to her cubicle, fuming for the entire day. While she was screaming in her boss's office, people were snickering. One of the women went to me and whispered in my ear, "I'm not going to tell, but I know you did it. Thank you for making our day." I looked back at her with this knowing look on my face while saying, "I didn't have anything to do with that." She just smiled back and said, "Sure." Oh, and the Eagles won their last 2 games that season, but never took first again. The Giants won the division. And we never saw another sign. 5. Back in 2019, I was working for the French tax office in Toulouse. I'm a 36-year-old man and was at the front desk for a busy day. Full operated front desk 4. Plus many other small cubicles for interviews, etc. As I was about to meet that entitled jerk, a male Karen, about 50 to 60 I guess, a pregnant lady in her 7th month, in the queue started to faint. She was, and baby too, lucky enough that people around her reacted fast enough to grab her and prevent her from hurting herself or the baby. She didn't want to annoy people by skipping the line, even if she had the right to. They pulled a chair for her and asked my colleagues and me for a glass of water. Now, it happens sometimes that someone isn't feeling well or just needs some water. It wasn't one of those days. She soon properly and totally fainted and was out of it for good. We pulled her on the side so people wouldn't have to walk around her, in case there were some who weren't careful, and started to place her in the recovery position. I used my phone to call for help, 16 for health problems in France, like 911 in the US. They accompanied me all along and said help was on its way. She kept coming up and fainting over and over. I had to get help from a passerby who spoke Arabic, as she wasn't in a state to properly answer my questions. When out, she didn't react to pressure or pain. I'm not a sadist. I was under instructions to see if she had a reaction. Now, while all of that happened, the male Karen was still at my station waiting for me to come back. I had only told him I had to check if the woman was fine or not, and never warned him how long it would take me. But as all of this happened in front of everyone, it wasn't hard to see I wouldn't be able to conduct his interview. The guy still felt entitled to have me come back to my chair and conduct it. Even in this stressful situation, I maintained my calm and politely answered that I couldn't come back, and that any of my colleagues would be perfectly fine and happy to take charge. The guy berated me and demanded I let the woman be taken care of by someone not from our office. As it happened in our offices, we were responsible. That guy pissed me off so much, I pulled my most sadistic Heath Ledger Joker face and started rubbing my hands against each other, a gesture we don't do as it scares people and they think we will get off by being sadists to them. And announced for the whole crowd, who had heard the whole conversation, "Don't worry, sir. Please wait at my desk. I promise you I will take good care of you." I wanted to pull an audit on his ass, but strangely, I couldn't find him anymore when the medics finished to take the lady away. Both the lady and baby were able to get home the following day after a night in observation. Child in stroller. Didn't notice mom went sick. Dad was able to leave work and get to our office and leave with his family and the healthcare personnel. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 151, and thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, do hit the like button. If you want early access to the videos, then support me on my Patreon, which is linked in the description. You can do that for as little as $1 or more a month. You'll also find a link to the Hellfreezer Teespring merchandise store, and if you especially enjoyed this video, why not leave a tip? Do that by hitting the little heart with a $sign in the middle below the video. You don't have to do any of that, but I appreciate it, and thank you kindly. Alrighty, no other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question and answer of the day. And today's question is: what's the first thing you think of whenever you see there's a weather alert in your local area? Where I am right now, I'm sitting here with an orange alert for wind, which means it's pretty bad, but not the worst it could be. My first thought was, better make sure my phone's charged in case the power goes out, which I think it's sort of charged, but I better top it up. Then it was, I hope it's calmed down by tomorrow because I need to go buy groceries and top up power. But obviously the priority in that situation isn't food, it's my phone. So, why don't you let me know what yours are in a comment below. And before we go, let's have the answer from, I think, the last video. And today's answer comes from Idiots in the Wild 150, and it comes from Magic Phoenix 553. I would change my job. This was in relation to what would you do if you suddenly woke up and you didn't have to worry about money anymore. I would change my job and become one of those cruise vloggers that reviews cruises. So I can still be doing something, but I'm also on vacation. Or I would become an avid hobbyist. Really go for that eccentric person down the street kind of vibe. Because I would go absolutely stir crazy if I was just doing nothing. And I think I can certainly agree with that. Okay, with that, I'm gonna head off for now. It's getting windier outside. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.